so that we take a look at that and inform our conversation this morning. Let's listen to that.
These abductions and killings of youth is now a worrying trend, and we demand that it stops forthwith. It has now become the signature modus operandi since the Gen Z protests. It has resulted in lengthy illegal detentions, like in the case of Bob Jage, Aslam, and Jamil Langton. And in some cases, it does not end up with long detention. It ends up with extrajudicial killing. You remember the young university student, Denzel Omondi, who was kidnapped during the Gen Z protests and surfaced in a quarry dead. You will recall that only 2 days ago, the burial of John Jogona Kuria of Kapenguria, who was abducted, and within a week, his body surfaces. So this is the signature way in which Ruto is operating. We have credible sources who have indicated that there is a special abduction stroke killer squad, which is comprised of both police and army officers. And this squad, we are told reliably, is based somewhere in Karen, near the DP's residence, and another wing of it is based in Orepolos, in Kajiado.
Kathy, let me bring you on this one. When we hear things like this, when we witness cases of abductions on screen, you know, during the day, in broad daylight, this happening, should the nation be worried for their own security? Should people be very, very concerned?
Yes, we should be very concerned when we hear all these things. And definitely what should follow is a very deep, in-depth investigation so that we verify all this information that we are getting. And if for sure these squads and these elite groups actually exist, they should be dismantled immediately. Okay,
who then investigates these? Because these investigating agencies are the ones that are actually being accused.
I think IPOA, when it comes to the police force, IPOA is actually the check, you know, the oversight authority that checks on what the police are doing. Then they table the report, just like they did yesterday. They table the report to Parliament. And I think Parliament is supposed to act also. Because it can never be business as usual. It can never be business as usual. But then remember, I think one of the things that we need to commend Kenyans for is that the people of Kenya are woke. They are more enlightened. They continue to agitate for good leadership and good governance. And what is actually happening right now, it's very much in order, because we are actually calling the government to act. You know, we are calling also the heads of all those troops to put their houses in order so that these things actually stop. Okay. Yeah.
There's something that we are talking about, the sanctioning, because that was one of the recommendations, that we should sanction, sanction and actually summon the CS for Interior, and right now he's the Deputy President, and also the IG of Police, so that we get to hold people responsible for these particular actions.
I think we don't have a vacuum as far as that office is concerned, because right now, in as much as the Deputy President, Professor Abraham Kidiki, has become the Deputy President, we have an acting Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi.
So, and that was my question. Should we, is he the person that is supposed to come to answer to this, despite the one that is now holding a different office, the one that was?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Jim?
I think at the end of the day, the issue of if you look at the conviction rate of IPOA, for instance, it's appalling. Okay. It is a sad state of affairs that you have an institution like IPOA that sometimes complains like the rest of us, you know, and they come and say, you know, it is difficult because of the way these police officers were camouflaged. There's nothing we can do. Then what the hell are you doing in that office? Why are we pumping public resources into your office if the best you can do is come and tell us, apologies guys, a few people died, but there's nothing we can do since the police were what do we need to do? And that's the role of Parliament, as Kathy is saying, that then Parliament needs to then say, is IPOA underfunded? Are they under-resourced? Do we need to do better? Do we need to employ more investigators? What do we need to do to ensure that this body that is in charge of oversighting the National Police Service does a good job? And just to bring to your attention, Brian, that the issue of abductions and killings and torture and this system of intimidation is not just unique at the national government. It is happening at the county level, right? You have bloggers, any critics of government being killed, doused in acid, and their bodies found later on. You have people being raped because they are critics of governments in places like Mombasa. You have people appearing dead in Kisii and many other places across this country. Essentially, as I said earlier, those who take power take it that they are the high and mighty, and thou shalt not ask any question. And this is what will happen. Today, people will be abducted and we will keep quiet, or they will arrest some of us. But statistics actually show that when we are getting closer to elections, abductions, killings usually increase. Because the reason they increase is because we're in a charged atmosphere. So tomorrow you and I will go to vote. If anything, God forbid, someone decides to rig elections and we refuse, then because we already helped them to create this, what Martha Karua called a killer/abduction squad, then that's exactly what they will do to us. So my recommendation is that as Parliament does its job, that this doesn't just become one of those many reports that Parliament has, that it's kept at the shelf, that they actually go ahead and create policies that can help us fix this matter once and for all. Because the IG of police the other day, when he was summoned in court, the last IG of police before we had this new one, when he was summoned in court, he had refused to show up in court. And the court had told him, produce Bob Njagi and the other two who had disappeared. The day that he finally showed up in court, these individuals somehow miraculously appeared. So I think that in itself, I think anyone who can read 1 + 1 = 2 shows that the police know where these individuals are, they know who is holding these individuals, and that all it calls for is a lot of activism on the part of citizens to constantly call out and constantly ensure that no one is abducted and we keep quiet, no one is killed and we keep quiet. But then on the side of Parliament, they also need to do better by enacting legislation that protects citizens. All right,
now 26 is a very big number, you know, for people, because you can only imagine the kind of torture and you know, anxiety that the families are going through, not knowing where their kids are, especially at this particular moment. You have no idea whether they're going to turn up alive or dead. But even with that said, what Jim has been able to mention has been the issue to do with even anybody that has become a critic, even at the county level, at the national level. You know, to some extent, you're just counting days or hours before, you know, somebody knocks at your door and takes you away. Are we going back to the dark days? Because that has been the rhetoric that people have been saying. You know, you're taking us back to the days where we did not have a, you know, a right to speak against the ills that we actually did see in society, and even to criticize the government to some extent. If you feel like you need to criticize the government, you have to think twice, because you have no idea what is going to who is going to come after you after that. Are we going back? Are we really going back to our history?
Our democracy is really growing, developing, and flourishing, and we should not, you know, slip back to those dark days when, you know, people were just being killed, abducted, and all those things that used to happen to men and women, and even the young people. Unfortunately, these things can also happen to children, as you can see, and we know that even a few children have been killed, and you look at it and wonder, what is this offense that was committed by a child? As a mother, I know that is very painful. And I can also imagine the pain that the families go through when you start to figure out that there's this child, there's this adult, there's this husband, there's this wife or daughter, son that is missing, and you really do not know. And one of the cases that I've really seen being highlighted very seriously on social media is even the case of this blogger, a lady, Aoko. Yeah, and everyone is asking, where is she? And there are even speculation, some people saying she's alive and others saying the opposite. And you can imagine the pain, the agony that the family is going through at a time like this. Having said that, I think even our bloggers and the people who are using the social media space, they also need to be very careful. As a politician who's been in that you know, out there doing my campaigns and everything, I also know that the bloggers and the social media users can get very careless with what they do in that space. You know, where you know, like you're paid to say certain things about people or say certain things about an opponent and really tarnish their name and do that kind of, you know, which is purely unnecessary. But then I'm not saying that those people who blog and say negative things about others should be abducted or killed or maimed. You know, no, that is not what I'm saying. We should never allow this country to go back there. We shouldn't allow ourselves to go back there. And therefore, as I said earlier, the fact that the people can really call this out and the masses, the citizens, are saying this is wrong, that is a very good starting point into moving to the future and ensuring that these killings, abductions and everything stops. But as I have said, right now, the buck stops at the parliament. Our elected leaders, they are the representatives of the people. They've gotten these reports. They've been told what is happening. Secondly, these individual killer cops, and they are known, they should take responsibility. Because you cannot commit an atrocity, you cannot commit murder, you cannot go killing people and say that you're doing that because you're part of the government. You should take responsibility as an individual. As an individual, and that is what we expect to see. Someone must be brought to book. Okay,
and I want to ask you this. So, because a lot of people will actually narrow it down to the head of state, you know, for action to be seen. They want to see action being taken. So they will go back to the head of state and say, okay, it is your administration, or this is happening under your administration, and yet we are not seeing anything happening here. So what will be the role of the head of state in this particular matter?
I think the role of the head of state is actually to call his troops to order and perhaps even have a meeting. I know he does, he chairs the meeting for the security committee. I think it's high time that he takes this seriously. I believe he is doing that, and sits with his heads of all those departments and get a clear way forward. Also, you know, offer a report to us, you know, like some feedback to us and assure us that we are safe in our own country and tell the country what he intends to do moving forward. I know my colleague here has said that it's hard to believe the head of state, but I think in this particular case, he needs to come out clearly and give a very clear direction. We also need to see action being taken because I know the entire world is watching. It's just the other day when the international community through the ambassadors commented on all these issues. So we must also, we can't just afford to be hard. You know, like you're saying, we promise that this will not be done, but something must happen. We must see that something is actually happening so that we also boost the confidence of Wananchi, the international community, and all these other actors, including ourselves, who are observing.
All right, Jim, because just like I asked Kathy here, we always narrow it down to the head of state. Some people will say, for this to happen, it has to have the blessing of so-and-so. So what is the role of His Excellency, the President, when it comes to ensuring that this does not happen again? Because at some extent it seems like saying it will not happen under my administration is not enough.
I think, so one, the reason why we go back to him is ultimately someone has to bear the greatest responsibility. If you remember, that was this line that was used even when the ICC inductees went to the ICC. We said that the Inspector General of Police then bore the greatest responsibility because the people who committed most of the atrocities in 2007 were police officers. But we did not go for individual police officers. We went for the Inspector General of Police because the police is a disciplined force. There's a reason they're called the disciplined force. Disciplined force means you take orders. If my superior tells me, Jim, march left, you march left. You do not ask why. And that is their training, unfortunately. That is, and probably for a long time it has been said, something needs to be done about the training of the disciplined forces. But that is the disciplined forces. So that ultimately, I cannot hold the person who was ordered to shoot only responsible. Of course, we must hold them for their account. But the person who gave the order must be given that. So anytime that there's a security operation in this country, that security operation is sanctioned at the National Security Council level. Nobody wakes up, no police officer wakes up and decides to go to a protest and shoot protesters. They woke up from their house without any orders, wore their uniform, took their gun, went to the streets and started shooting protesters. That does not happen. It is a security operation. And security operations are sanctioned at the National Security Council level. The people and the persons who sit at that National Security Council level are known. The person who chairs it, all right, ultimately is the president. So that just means the role of the president is pure and simple. You keep saying you're someone who lives by democratic ideals. Live by those very ideals. You swore to uphold the Constitution. Uphold that Constitution. Do not be afraid of your citizens. Just do the right thing. I think that is, do not be afraid, because there is a panic mode. You saw even when Kindiki was being sworn in the other day, it looked like we were in a police state. For a long time, we could not occupy State House Road because there was military presence. Up to now, the Gazette order that deployed the military on our streets is still active. It has not been degazetted. So there's this panic within this administration that you're wondering, but in as much as that part, everything that led us to this panic, they seem to be doing it. So if it was high taxation, they seem to be still doing it. If it was increasing the prices of things and sneaking in legislation that are not popular, they're still doing the same things. So you're still doing the same things that the people do not want that led us to this. But then you're highly, highly, highly militarizing the state to the level where one would assume that we're in a state of war, in a war-zone country. So what, and that's why I keep telling Kenyans that we need to be very afraid going into an election in 2027 with the current state of affairs, with a highly policed, highly militarized system. That just means right now we cannot assemble in peace. I cannot just go and call a few people to Uhuru Park so that we assemble in peace. Suddenly we'll be dispersed.
Exactly.
I cannot just enjoy wearing the flag of Kenya in peace. The flag of my republic.
You'll be a protester.
As a measure of patriotism. I cannot wear that in peace. I cannot, in good conscience, even what I am doing here might be considered treasonous. Some people might actually call me, I am a treasonous element for calling out government.
And we say, Kathy here did say, if you're going to call out government, then you need to be very careful to some extent.
And that's sad.
You know, I want to just disagree with him a bit, where, Raz, I still agree with him to a very large extent. The Gen Z's protest actually led Kenyans to be more patriotic, and actually, especially as the millennials going, you know, and above, because even the other day when I remember I attended a cultural event at Dumberi Stadium, and everybody came with a flag. Even during...
And what were you people called? Mungiki?
No, we were not called Mungiki.
Someone has called you people Mungiki.
I know, but we were not called Mungiki because of carrying flags. I think that the Mungiki narrative became as a political, because of the political connotations, and not necessarily why, because we carried the flags. Look at Kindiki's swearing in itself. I saw most of the Kenyans, I think almost all the Kenyans who were there, they were carrying a flag. So I think what the young people started is actually something towards the right direction for this country, because now we are embracing each other more as Kenyans. We are proud to be...
But that embrace, I think, is what we have. Jim says that the state needs to be seems to be having a problem with, because when you come together and show a little bit of patriotism, they look like you're like a threat to the state. And just
I don't think you can be a threat to the state just because of being patriotic. I think let's be fair. I know it's very easy to criticize government when you're in the opposition. And actually that is something that is very palatable and sells very quickly, as opposed to someone who is actually supporting the government. As I sit here today, I actually belong to the Azimio coalition. I do not belong to government. Even those people who know me very well as someone from the opposition. So, but then let's also call a spade a spade. Let's be honest enough to point out on certain things. I know the agitation and the issues of police killing, abductions, and all this manner of, you know, bad stuff that the police force are doing is something that we need to condemn and speak against. But then let's also be, you know, sincere and honest as we converse around these issues. The Gen Z protest, is something that will change this country forever.
Okay.
And we are not the same people. We are not where we started, and we are not where we were last year.
It has changed a lot of time in the political realm.
Yes, and it is a step towards the right direction for this country. And I really believe that the young people of this country are going to steer this country forward.
Right.
Where some of us failed to act, where some of us failed to speak out. I'm very proud as a Kenyan mother today that our own children have come out and they are speaking in one voice strongly against very many things and for the betterment of this country.
Okay, I want us to wind up because I'm running out of time. I want to give each one of you a minute on the issue of femicide because at least 100 deaths of women have been recorded across the country since October, and this October is just last month. And so there's yesterday's meeting. There was a meeting with Chigai yesterday where it culminated in the launch of a document titled Strategic Direction that stipulates several targets that the office intends to achieve. However, the document was long on generalization and short on substance on the issues affecting women, despite given a seat at the president's table. Let's talk a little, just as you wind up here, what is the one thing that is wrong with the fabric of this society, especially on issues to do with femicide in the country? 100 is not a small number in the month of October. Let me come to you. Start with you. 30 seconds.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for allowing us to discuss that issue of femicide. But in my view, maybe we need another session, a whole 1 hour or something, to discuss it in depth, because it's a worrying trend in this country. It is very unfortunate that women are just being killed like that, you know. If you go back to history, just recently, is when we started highlighting these issues. But it doesn't mean that it started the other day. It's something that has been happening over years, just like these other issues that we have discussed today. All right. But the rising number of women who are just being killed, and in this case, there are those who are killed in the protest, because the Gen Z protest, as my brother would agree, we saw a large number of women participate. So first of all, there are those that were killed during the protest, but we also have others that are being killed in their own spaces, whether in their home, by relatives, by boyfriends, by partners, by husband, and all that kind of a thing. Right. Is this something that we can cure? Is it a good thing that the government has come out through the advisors to condemn and call it a national disaster? Yes, that is a step to the right direction, but a lot more needs to happen. For example, we don't just need to enumerate, show the numbers, but we also need to know who are the people who perpetuated, who are the people who did these things, and they must also be brought to book. Okay,
30 seconds, Jim.
I mean, before the Gen Z protest, we had the End Femicide protest, which was a big movement of women in this country. And in my opinion, that is what culminated in the Gen Z protest. Women showed us how to protest. The reason why we have so many women dying today is because we have a violent society. We have men who've been raised violently. As a result, they are violent towards women. These men are dying at the hands of police. Women are dying at the hands of men. We need to sort out the violent nature of our society.
All right, so it's a violent nature of our society. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time here on the show, and also Kathirungu, thank you so much for making time.
Most welcome.
That's where we wrap it up. And Albert Laga says, when did state abduction stop? Since it's a tool used by security agency when public interest jeopardize national interest. Something like Jim had mentioned when he started. All right, thank you so much for your time and engaging us on our socials. My name is Brian Amwai. Coming up is Morning Vibe with Remy Majala. And yes, let's do this again when God says we do. Do have yourselves a lovely day.
When it's a Saturday, there's only